Hello, and welcome to another episode of TA Tech Unboxed, the podcast that is meant for TA and HR leaders, where we are going to be chatting to the people behind the tools that we use every day in this community. If you are listening to this, go check out YouTube because there is a live demo that has been recorded especially for us that we host from every guest. So go check that out. Don't forget to subscribe. Of course, really helps us book other shows. My name's Chris Haslam. And I'm here with my co-host, Mr. Darren Bush. Mr. Darren Bush, how are you?
I'm a little bit shocked, if I'm honest, Chris.
Well, because that was one take.
It was normally I sit here for the second 3 or 4 times. So yeah, brilliant. You got a game face on.
Game face. Beard is ready.
Yeah. I'm good. I'm working on something at the moment, which will probably be out by the time this is aired.
Okay.
Around interview scheduling.
Interesting.
Yeah.
In what sense are you working on?
I'm highlighting for me. There's a problem of interview scheduling, and I don't think the current interview scheduling tools are solving the problem.
Interesting.
Okay. So I would say that interview scheduling, the issues are that the hiring manager is the blocker. They're the bottleneck, and the tools itself seem to be like point solutions, or seem to be like Calendly send you a link. We assume when you have these demos, you assume you can book, as a candidate, you can book times in, but actually in reality, getting times in a manager's schedule is really difficult. And there isn't enough emphasis on placeholders, which I know a lot of people do.
Yeah, or like time blocking.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Interesting.
There's not, and I think that needs to be weaved into. If you think about having an interview, is actually it is part of the hiring process. It's like it will happen. So why isn't there more emphasis and focuses on interview scheduling or availability in the system?
Something that we are planning for
up front
part of the process, right?
Yeah,
and even to the point of having a date that we're like, hey, anticipate interviews from 2 weeks from now.
That's what I was thinking.
There will be interviews for those dates.
Yeah.
So give me some times now. I'm going to block them. I'm going to block out those slots. Now I'm just going to put. All we got to do is put people in them. Right.
You could use Ben Mahoney's Jobs SI to predict when the interviews could take place based on the job role.
That's a
little plug.
That's an eye wiggle for you, Mr. Mahoney. Interesting. Well,
how are you?
on that, I'm very good, thank you. Yeah. And on that subject, I've got nothing interesting to discuss beyond beard growth for the last 3 weeks since the last time we spoke. Connecting tools, and you talked about point solutions, is very on subject for today's show, and also
it is
a frustration, right, for TA leaders. If every tool that we use often is not built by one. I know there are a lot of providers that are trying to do that now, but it's often not built by one, and getting them to talk to each other is one of the most frustrating parts of building a tool stack, right?
Yeah.
So I'm super interested to chat to today's guest, which will.
He's going to solve the problem. So
he's solving the problem definitely. So this show actually is TA Tech Unboxed. This show is actually for the people that run technology in the TA space.
And TA leaders as well. We'll talk about this in a second. TA leaders who want to push the agenda with the tech vendors.
That brings us really nicely to who do we have on today's show, Darren?
Today, Chris, we've got Romain, CEO and co-founder of StackOne. Welcome to the show, Romain.
Hey guys, good to be here. Thanks for having me.
No worries. And we always start with, in terms of, if you can give us a little intro, if the listeners to understand in terms of who you are and how did you end up becoming CEO of StackOne?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name's Romain, co-founder, CEO of StackOne. So in a nutshell, StackOne is an integration platform that translates APIs and make them all work the same way. So our customers are actually some of the TA tech kind of world. So they essentially want to build integrations in their product. And instead of having to build each integration one at a time, we've pre-translated all the APIs of the HRIS and ATS and LMS out there, so they can just plug into our standard APIs, and they're pre-integrated with a lot of tools. So they can build like a Workday integration, iSIMS integration, a HiBob integration, all at the same time, instead of having that 12 to 18 months roadmap. Essentially, what it means for them is that they're able to just deliver integrations natively in their product much faster. The background kind of why we created this company, which I think the main question I get is, why would you want to dedicate 100% of your time on building integrations? And the story is that essentially my co-founder and I essentially spent 10 years working in software companies. I worked for 3 years at Google. I've worked at Oracle. We've built a startup together before as well. And we've built more than 50 integrations for 1,000 clients before. And it was just the biggest pain in the roadmap, essentially. It's the dream of the sales teams, and it's the nightmare of the engineering teams having to build that many integrations. So we built a platform that made it easier to build.
So you're fixing integrations within the TA tech space.
Exactly. Yeah, we felt like it was such a fragmented space that we wanted to fix the problem.
And that's, I guess, really, I know we need to go into your background a little bit more, which I'd love to do, because you've got a really interesting background. But just to make sure I get it, so you've doubled down on building integrations just inside the kind of TA and HRIS stack.
Yeah, exactly.
You're my hero.
That's, the idea of our product is, because we translate the APIs into standardized APIs, we had to pick specific areas, like categories of products, to do that in, right? So actually the first one we built was ATS. The second one was HRIS, and then we're launching LMS next month. The reason we picked those is for a couple of reasons. One is there's a huge number of tools. Like HRIS alone, you've got dozens in the UK, and then you've got different HRIS tools and payroll platforms and so on in different countries. Second problem is they're very hard to integrate with, because they have completely different ways of integrating with each other. And third problem is the partnership kind of issue. You want to partner with a company to get access to their API, and they're asking you, well, how many clients do we have in common? And you're like, well, I don't have any, because I need to partner with you first to get the clients. And then, you can't get the clients because you don't have the integration. So we kind of break that cycle by just allowing you to build the integration using a pre-built connector, and then you can go and build the partnerships on top of it.
If you're a TA leader and you're listening to this as well, what's the problem at the moment I'm having right now?
Well, funnily enough, so we don't sell to TA leaders directly, right? That being said, I actually end up speaking to a lot of them because we solve a problem that they're facing, which is that their tools don't talk to each other. So they're like, oh, I'm using this like assessment platform, it's not talking to my ATS, or I'm using this, or I'm using this like, employee benefit platform. It's not synchronizing the employees from my HRIS, so I can automatically, onboard, offboard employees. And I think that's becoming the norm, is that TA leads in general are expecting their tools to talk to each other. That's the dream. The reality is the tools don't have native connectors. The integration sometimes just doesn't work as well as you expect it to. And it takes ages for them to build the integration. So we kind of solve that problem for them. So a lot of our business actually comes from the TA leads letting their software providers know about StackOne and saying like, hey, by the way, did you know you can build the integration much faster now? In the past, they used to take like 1 to 3 months to build an integration. Now you can build 10 in 2 weeks, essentially.
You've built the ultimate sales engine there, haven't you? Like
That's essentially, yeah. We just,
agony.
Yeah, but the people,
you're my hero.
Yeah, the people who suffer the most from it are ultimately the end users, right? The TA leaders and people, head of people, and so on.
You're solving the problem that has friction for the software that's trying to get to the TA leader. So absolutely, and positively, like you are the unsung, you're the Batman, aren't you? You're like the unsung hero, the white knight that Gotham needs.
Yeah, it's integrations is not a sexy area that people like to talk about. So someone has to do it, but I think definitely solves a huge pain point. And you just look at the number of tools that people are using compared to even 5 years ago. I think between 2017 and 2022, number of SaaS products that people are using 10x. It went from like 15 to 130, which is crazy. And if these tools don't talk to each other, don't talk to your source of truth, there's no way that you're going to get adoption of your platform, even if you sell to a company, even if you sell to an enterprise. The enterprises here, they've got like 30 tools not talking to each other. There's no way they're going to deliver the results that you're expecting or promising.
I bet that's grown as well, even with the amount of AI tools coming out at the moment. You can have AI for outreach. You can do AI obviously for interview scheduling and AI for note taking. I mean, there's just like this huge amount coming on the market.
Let's reel this back a little bit for a second, because we are supposed to go into your background first, and me and Darren we're gonna dork out about this in a minute, because you're like the ultimate TA Tech Unbox guest. You're for all of our guests, and that's literally the kind of what we discussed as our intro to this. That we were discussing it as this is a problem, right, for us all, like wanting to, does it fit inside our stack? Can we use it? It's like more frustrating than anything else. So before we get into that stuff, let's go back. I've got your LinkedIn up here, and you mentioned ex-Google and the product that you started. Can you give us a little, like, because we really like to get to that kind of founding moment bit, and it's really interesting them to discuss how that works. So can you give us a little bit about your background, like maybe your startup, Yieldify, then into Google? It would be really interesting to hear a little bit how you came into this problem.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many stories of me grappling with integrations in good and bad ways. It actually started when I met my co-founder. So I was a consultant at a company called Maximizer, which we were working marketing technology, so completely different field. I was managing customers, helping them to, do A/B testing on their website, essentially in the travel space. Guillaume, my co-founder, was a solutions engineer, and basically he was building integrations already for my clients, and we were getting requests at the time. It was, here and there we were getting a new integration request, and my co-founder would build them, and I was like, wow, this guy is really fast, and he's really good at talking to clients. He's actually very good at helping customers, solve their integration problems with our solution. We can connect to a bunch of different things really quickly. It's not scalable because every time he has to come on a call with the customer and he has to build the integration, but he's really good. So we started, after leaving this company, decided to build another company together, which was an AI data analyst for marketers. So the idea was natural language. It was before GPT, bear in mind. So natural language processing was just beginning. And we were like, what if marketers could just ask questions to in natural language, and they would translate it to an API query, basically, and go and fetch data from their Google Analytics. It would help them to not have to learn how to use every tool. So again, had to build a lot of integrations, Google Analytics, databases, all sorts of tools, basically. And then we both joined a company called Yieldify. That's where we built 50 integrations. We used a platform called Cycler, which, by the way, is fantastic. It's very good, just didn't scale very well for us, but it's actually one of the best integration platforms out there. And we had 15 people full-time managing integrations. We had to build all these integration flows, basically, like, hey, Yieldify is like a journey optimization platform, had to connect to like an email platform, had to connect to like a customer data platform, etc. Every time the APIs would change, we'd have to make an update for all the customers that were using it. We had to customize it for each customer's specific setup, and that was just super, super painful for us. Very kind of slowed us down. And then
just to ask a quick question. Yeah. So when you talk about the updates, it could be like a product update from the other customers. That anything like that could happen. You would have to change the APIs. Exactly.
You integrate with, I guess in the TA world, it would be like a Workday. Workday releases a new API version. All of a sudden, one of the API endpoints that you were using to exchange employee or candidate or application information doesn't exist anymore. You have to just find a new way to exchange the data, which just happens constantly. Workday is maybe a little bit more stable, but it happens all the time with other platforms.
Yeah.
And then I joined Google. So I moved to California. That was a really big event for me.
That was back in 2019.
It was in end of 2019, just before the pandemic, and I joined. At that time, Google was just changing extremely quickly, and it was actually towards the end of my time at Google that I worked a lot on e-commerce platform integration. So again, different type of integrations that we had to build. Even with Google resources, I was in RE 120, which actually I happen to be wearing the jumper today. We had to build integrations with e-commerce platforms. Just happens to be extremely painful to do that. And even with Google resources, you just still have to sit down and learn the API, documentation and get access to sandboxes and all that stuff. It's still the same thing. Like it's not because you're a big company that it makes it a lot easier. So at that point, Yieldify was getting sold, and Guillaume and I wanted to make another company together. And we had an investor who was actually the founder and former CEO of Yieldify, who basically said, like, whatever you guys build, I'll give you money, which I know is not the case for like every company out there. But credit to him, Jay Radia. He was our first supporter and kind of helped us get off the ground very quickly. And we decided to solve the problem of integrations because Guillaume and I really felt that pain so many times before. And I think that was for us the trigger moment was to think, hey, this problem is not going to go away. Like there's more and more tools out there. There's so many, the problem is huge in the TA tech space and in the HR tech space because there are so many tools and we're seeing new HRs, new ATS launching every single day. And there's even new ones that came up since we started the company that we've been adding to the platform. And the second piece of why we wanted to build this is there's a data security and privacy issue, I think, in the TA tech space and in HR space, where you're dealing with a lot of really sensitive data, right? The dream of your customer is to connect all their tools together. The nightmare of your customer is to connect all their tools together, because that means you have to grant access to the employee data to all of your other tools. And that's a big, big issue for a lot of companies. And I think the reality of the integration is really, really painful. So we decided to build a platform that just never stores any data. That was kind of the start of the company, is to be like, hey, let's connect every tool together, never store any of the data, make it like the simplest and most transparent platform out there.
I mean, I'm like speechless. Taking a super challenging problem that you've seen, in a huge business like Google, and then really built something with super purpose, right? So you've taken that. We're not going to touch anyone's data. We're not going to house it. We're just literally going to box it and let it pass straight through, which solves a problem. And again, like Darren and I were saying in the prep for this call and in the intro here, we're talking about like how much of a pain in the arse to be. Just quickly, do you connect with Ashby? No. Oh, damn it. So many hours wasted of prepping and getting sign off to get this particular product in. So was there like, I know you might have covered it a little bit there, but like, was there like this click boom moment? You're like, mainly around ATS, like mainly around, HR and the TA space. What was the like, we're definitely going for that one?
Yeah. So we were kind of lucky to speak. So initially, when you start a company, I guess most folks out there have the same experience. You just talk to a lot of people, right? You try and validate your idea. You try and talk to companies that are potential customers. And we happened to talk to Screenloop. And Screenloop became our first customer. And that's why ATS was the first category that we built. We ended up building an extremely deep data model, basically, for ATSs. So we have very good integration with a lot of ATSs so that we can power even tools as advanced as a Screenloop that literally does analytics and intelligence on your hiring process. But they want to do that at scale, regardless of the ATS that you're using. And so I think the light bulb moment for us was when we were talking to them and they were evaluating a few different platforms out there, actually. So a few of our competitors and we were reviewing them with them, right? Because we're trying to understand, is there really a business in this? And we were the only one that just didn't store any data, and that was real time. That was really the trigger point where we're just like, hold on, why hasn't anyone done this so far? And that was kind of when Guillaume and I I remember we were on a call at that point because I was still in California, and we're just like, wait, we've gone through so many business ideas before this, by the way. Bear in mind, we've been talking for a couple months, and we're like, this could be a really good one, because you're solving the sales problem. Like, you're helping the sales teams to not have to say no to that integration request. And you're helping the engineering teams to not have a roadmap that's completely blocked by the integrations. That's when, for us, that was like, yes, this is it. And then we started working on the name, and that was another 2 weeks lost.
I have to ask, because you mentioned it. Any other business ideas that nearly caught your attention as you were going through this?
I thought you were going to go names.
I thought that's where you were going to go as well. I could have told you about the other names that we were going to pick.
We'll come back to that.
Yes, ideas, dude, like so many. So a couple examples. One that we nearly really went live with was a machine learning platform that can automatically calculate the carbon emissions of clothes. So just based on the label, we would have been able to detect, hey, it was made in China and it's using cotton and it's using polyester, and we have the proportions. There's a little bit of regulation around clothing labeling, and we'd be able to use averages and machine learning to sort of estimate that. Realized the data wasn't good enough a lot of the time, so just not super accurate. So we sort of gave up on that. We've been using GPT for a long time. So another one was actually using GPT to help with software onboarding. That's another big pain point that we had, is like, how do you get someone to, I mean, TA Tech is exactly the same. Like, you've got a new ATS. How do you use it? Like, where do you find the candidates? How do I send a new assessment, all that stuff? So there's a lot of uses in there. And all these experiences actually taught us a lot of things that we then needed to build StackOne. Like, for example, StackOne, a lot of the integrations are built with LLMs in the background. Like, we're actually not using the human development time is reserved for the most complex problems to solve. A lot of it is automated with LLMs. So, you can see some of the original ideas that we had are ultimately fed into StackOne.
Names.
So it was StackOne, or the other one that we had was, and bear with me, I'm glad we didn't pick it, because now I'm like almost ashamed to say it, but it was Appily, API-LY. So it was obviously like happily, but it was like kind of, when you mentioned APIs, people are like, oh, like, I don't want to talk about that. It's almost like the salespeople's like trigger word. And we thought, like, let's make it into a positive thing. We're actually making people happy about making API integrations. So that was the other name.
Yeah, I think StackOne is a great name, by the way. I think you chose it really good. Can I ask about the API question that every company seems to always see? When you're in a tender and you're speaking to a vendor and they're like, yeah, if we've got an API, we can integrate with anyone.
That rhymed, by the way. Can we just pause for a second? Because that rhymed, and I'm going to take a second to get over that. What was that line again?
I can't remember. I don't remember what I just said.
When you're in a tender with a vendor. It really got me that for a second. So
love it.
And breathe and start again.
I'll cut that bit out, yeah.
No, absolutely not.
Yes. Yeah. Is that true? Is that true? What are we not? What are we missing? I suppose the question is, what are we missing?
What are we missing? Yeah. Every API is very different. It's kind of I don't have a great analogy that comes to mind, but essentially, it's not because a tool has an API that it will have what you need to do with it, right? And I think the reality is, if it has an API, likely you can build an integration with it, but there are so many steps and so many things that could go wrong before that actually happens. You need to get in. Let's say, for example, like Workday has an API. It's not because Workday has an API that you can integrate with it like overnight, right? Like, you need to contact Workday, get a sandbox account. Already dead in the water. Like, that's not going to happen for 90% of companies. Like, you're not going to get a response. You need to, let's say you get a sandbox account, you then need to figure out how the API documentation works. If you don't have developers who know about APIs, which happens, developers have different skill sets, they're going to struggle with figuring out the Workday integration. There's multiple APIs that you need to work from, and then you need to make API calls, and you need to make sure that the API actually supports the data that you need. So not to say no, like sometimes it is true. Like, if another company has an API, yes, potentially you can approach them and work with them. But there's so many things that wouldn't work. And a lot of the time you just need to test it to know if it works or not, which is not a very helpful answer, but sometimes you just need to build the integration to know that it's working, because until it works, there could be things that go wrong. That being said, I would argue it is probably the closest thing to the truth that you could say in a sales pitch situation. So I don't want to blame the salespeople for kind of saying that.
Yeah, from what you're saying though, there's lots of hoops, there's a lot of hurdles you got to go through, and then even then it won't be perfect, because I know that there's instances where it's not perfect, and you probably didn't mention that it's going to cost, right? I mean,
on top of that,
it's going to cost because obviously that you're taking resources.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And you change that then to how does that work?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, the model that we sort of decided to go with is kind of to say, well, actually 90% of the APIs do the same thing, right? Like the vast majority, you can get a candidate, you can list the job postings, you can create a new candidate, you can create a new application, etc. So we created this standardized API that is pre-mapped behind the scenes to all of those APIs out there. So we kind of built like a translation. It's like a travel adapter that you take with you to any country, and you can plug into any kind of outlet in any country in the world. We kind of do that, but with APIs. And the value is that, well, you know that it's working because we've pre-mapped it, and you can test it actually in like 5 minutes. It doesn't take you months now to do it. You don't have to go and learn how the API works. You just need to connect a dummy account of HiBob, for example, or Greenhouse, and just make some API calls, just test that it's working, and it takes 5 minutes. So that's really the idea behind it.
Are you able to share, like, in terms of what clients you're working with at the moment, or
yeah?
And then the second question I had was, you probably work with so many different ATS providers. Are there, I don't know if you can say this, but are there instances where you see some of the things, the information that they're asking, or you can pull, you go, that's a bit different. What they're doing there, that's quite not as different, but it's also, I can see what you're doing there. It's a little bit better. You obviously have to name the people.
Yeah. No, I've got so many stories. I mean, good. Which clients do we work with? I mean, we work with, especially in the TA space, it could be anything from candidate sourcing. So think of like job boards, AI candidate matching platforms, and job advertising platforms, etc., to candidate assessment, background checks, candidate portals as well. So, that sort of create the portal for candidates directly connected to the ATS so they can share some of the progress, etc. All the way to HRIS, because an ATS might want to create the employee and onboard the employee once they've been hired, and kind of everything in between. So you can sort of see anything that needs to revolve around the ATS can be our client. So a couple of examples that we have. We work with a company called Localize, which is a big global mobility platform. They help companies to hire globally. So obviously you need to connect with the ATS and HRIS. ScreenLoop, like I mentioned, is one of our big customers. Pop AI is a AI technology that helps screening and conversational automation with candidates to provide better candidate experience, and so on and so forth. So we have a few. And ATSs themselves. I mean, I'm forgetting that ATSs themselves need integrations as well.
Yeah, amazing.
But for your second question around, which ATSs kind of, I'm assuming you're asking like which ones do things completely differently, and it doesn't. So by the way, it's not a bad thing. Like I think it can be a good thing. Some ATSs just think differently. I know, like for example, Lever just has a completely different data model, and they just don't represent, in the same way like a candidate, an application, a job posting, the same way that a Greenhouse would, for example. So we have to do a lot of magic behind the scenes to make that translation happen in real time. But that definitely is one good example. Team Taylor has a lot of innovative stuff that they do that, exposed through their API that sometimes just requires a bit of extra work as well. But broadly speaking, what I would say to answer your question is enterprise ATSs, you can pretty much do whatever you want with them. The Avatures, the SAPs, the Workdays, like you can customize them to whatever end you want. more sort of off-the-shelf mid-market SMB ATSs, you typically see more standardization because they need to be able to, their customers need to be able to onboard and use them within like 10 minutes of signing up, because otherwise they're losing a customer. Enterprise, they're like, no, we're going to take 3, 4, 6 months to implement your ATS, and we're going to customize everything in it. So obviously their API is a bit more complex.
I'm just fascinating, isn't it? It's like I guess you're seeing inside the box, right? You're seeing kind of another layer of it. I assume I cannot get you to tell us who to avoid, so we'll come back to that another time. You talked a little bit about like tools, like in the typical stack earlier on. You were saying, is that, I don't know if you've, the 10x thing is like research you guys have done. That's super fascinating, isn't it? Because actually you're right. As you were saying it, I was like, actually maybe it was 10 years ago, LinkedIn and Bullhorn. But now, like, we've got tools for tools. I was thinking about, so like to write in-mail, we might use Twain to help us write the email, right? I know those don't typically talk together. That'll probably be a StackOne customer, but you're right. It has, 10x is probably liberal, isn't it?
It's literally, this is actual research, but the 10x is a real number between 2017 2022. So I don't know if 10x would still be between like 2020 2024, but it was, which company did that research? We did it when we did our obviously when we started the company, we sort of just justified the business opportunity through it, and it was Better Cloud. It was Better Cloud who did that research, and very interesting because it's absolutely exploding the number of tools that is being used. I think that has, like I was saying at the beginning, I think the expectation 10 years ago was not that your tools would integrate with each other, because you could at worst copy and paste data between tools. That was okay. Like you could download a CSV and upload it somewhere else because you only had 2 tools to do that between. Or potentially you could use some kind of like Zapier or something like that, where the work was actually on your plate as the customer to build the integration. Essentially, you were kind of doing the job of what the platforms now do. But that was okay. Nowadays, the expectation has completely shifted, where people like the TA leaders expect their tools to natively integrate. It has to be like a one-click enabling the integration with Ashby. Otherwise, I can't work with you, basically. The Zapier, and that's kind of, I would say that still works in some edge cases, but I would say that's not the average expectation of your B2B SaaS customer.
It's also that a little bit frustrating, that, isn't it? It's like, it's on me to fix the problem.
And to pay for it, by the way, because you're the one paying for Zapier as well. If you have a high volume of hires that you're making every month, you're now paying per API call, which means you have to know how many API calls you're going to be making with Zapier. Just becomes like a lot more, it sounds complicated, right? Like to me, it just sounds like it just doesn't make me want to use the platform if I'm like, I'm going to have to do all that work on top of it. And I think, to be honest, I think that the problem of integration just comes up more and more in internal discussions nowadays, because what I hear, at least from my customers, is just that their customers are asking for demos of the integration before signing up, because it's not enough anymore to say, yeah, we can build it, or yeah, we have an integration with XYZ. Show me, they're asking like, show me how it works. Show me what I can do with it. Is it just read, or is it read and write? Does it just write into the application, or does it write into the notes and attaches a document to the application? Does it, like, those details like 5-10 years ago, you wouldn't have thought about, but now people are like, okay, is this actually going to save me time, or is this going to create more work for me, basically?
I guess it's all been caused by the SaaS approach to building products, right?
The MVP approach of like, just build the bare minimum to say yes, and then kind of leave it until people complain, I guess. Yeah. To a large extent.
You find that we have to change mentality in this industry a little bit, because we're just so accustomed to tools not talking to each other. I think it's just like by its nature that one of our ATS doesn't talk to our assessment tool, and it's like that's how it is. it's a pain. We need to look into it, but we kind of let it go. But actually, in your way, you need to change our mindset to say, shouldn't accept this anymore. You should have, if you've got more than one tool, they should all be talking to each other.
I think it's happening right now. It's not even me kind of saying this is what should happen. I think this is more of an observation of what I'm hearing is that there are, recruitment agencies, a very good example of they are very time poor because time is money literally for them. And they are literally first call with a lot of the companies that I speak to. They're saying, unless you integrate natively with our bullhorn, we're not gonna be able to work with you because it's gonna be another tool that our team needs to use, another tool that we need to train them for, and there's gonna be time. And I think that mentality is already starting to exist in the in-house TA lead community as well.
The other thing as well, you're kind of creating a bit of a marketplace in some ways. I'm not saying that it's, that's the end goal, but you've got a suite of products which people can select and say, these are the ones we integrate with. Where are you on partnerships? So sort of like, how companies set this up? Because I know that some companies have marketplaces and then these partnerships work really well.
Yeah, absolutely. So our goal is not to replace owned marketplaces. We have a marketplace as far as it's like a list of integrations that you can enable or disable for your product. So it's more of a configuration screen, I would say. We build our own kind of partnerships. We partners with like Lever, HiBob, and just some of the companies basically in the space that are very open to expanding their ecosystem. I think it's great to see so many companies open to this. But what we do typically is that we encourage our customers to also build their own partnership with the ATSs themselves that we integrate with. And so although we facilitate the technical integration, so it unblocks the sales process very quickly, I think over the first few weeks and months after you start working with us and you launch that integration, we sort of direct them to build that partnership with the providers as well, as long as they're open to it, obviously.
Hopefully they will. And then that's probably our job then as a TA leader to come in and say, you need to have this in place. You
guys are like the unblockers, the magicians, the wizards, so to speak, of any of these situations. The gods of any of these situations is always, if a customer is asking for it, if a TA lead is asking for this and it's going to deliver business value to them, it's an immediate yes a lot of the time. Not, obviously exceptions, but that I think is where the TA lead, and this is really my suggestion for and call to action for people who listen to this who are not building TA tech but rather consuming TA tech, is you have the ability to say and request integrations and to say, if this is really going to unblock something and save you time, and a lot of the time it saves you hours a week, just requesting that integration and putting pressure, so to speak, on your providers is going to move the needle, because that is actually one of the biggest topics that they have on their mind. I can guarantee you they're already thinking about it. So you kind of requesting it will just accelerate things. It's not going to be a surprise to them that you're asking for an integration.
If you can suggest StackOne in the process of doing that.
I mean, if you're looking for something to unblock the situation even faster, definitely drop our name in it. But I think it's just even asking for it sometimes can unblock the situation, so they can go and talk to the other company and build that partnership.
Yeah, if they include in the RFPs and tenders, they even mention, in fact, they mention yourselves. That would be a great place to start.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's a really good point. Actually, it's like making it purposeful super early, right? I'm not even going to jump on a demo with you if you don't integrate with our stack. Here's our stack. I don't know if that's how you approach it, Darren.
Yeah, you can even you can specify.
You can have those boxes. Do you integrate with XYZ? And even, I mean, what I've seen in RFPs that we now help our customers to go through is, do you write to this ATS? Do you read from the ATS? Do you it goes as far as the actual functionalities of the integration, not just a yes or no, but actually what does it do? Does it, is it an assessment? Does it mean you're automatically triggering assessments when the candidate reaches a stage? Do I have to manually do it? Does the data get fed back? Where does it get fed back into my HB account? I think all of that information is really important to understand upfront.
So one more question about integration before we move on. My knowledge is limited, so excuse me. But I've seen some integrations where they have an iframe sometimes appear in the ATS. Where, for example, a video interview might be a video interview platform, and then you can actually see that's the information in the ATS. Is that something you deal with? Is that something you support with, or is it purely data going into the ATS to say click on a link, it'll take you back into that video interview platform?
So right now we just deal with the data exchange in the background, so to speak. So no visual implementation. Our customers tend to own the UI bit, so them coding, and it typically requires that partnership to be in place. That's kind of why so far. I can't say too much about it, but we're going in that direction where we'll facilitate the UI integration, which is so another 10x improvement for the TA lead, who just doesn't even have to leave their ATS anymore. They can just manage the entire end-to-end process of their candidates and recruitment process from the ATS. That requires a lot more work typically. And for us, there's a few kind of milestones that we need to reach over the next couple weeks, let's say, before we can launch it. Yeah. It's on our roadmap. As long as they have Brilliant. An API, we can do it. No, I mean, but that is actually one of the things that we're looking to build. Yeah. Absolutely.
And just because you're obviously in this space, what are you seeing in the TA space? Anything that's interesting you as well? Because you come from an outside perspective, you're now kind of seeing the different providers and platforms. Yeah, it'd be good to get your perspective on that.
I think there's two things that I've used personally in StackOne to recruit, because I'm exposed to so many techs, and I'm like, wow, this is actually super, super helpful. And I totally think this is revolutionary. One of them is AI. So literally just automating candidate screening, candidate notes transcription, scorecard pre-filling, candidate conversational AI, all that stuff is so cool. And it allows me to focus on really the part that actually matters in the recruitment process. Obviously, I think there's limitations to the technology today, and I think we all know there's issues with some of the platforms out there. But I think it's been super helpful. So we use ScreenLoop, for example. Obviously, we're one of their customers as well. The other trend that I've been seeing that I've been really interested in is anything to do revolving around DEI. And for us, it's things like better interview questions, better candidate interviewing practices, tools that help us to do this much more effectively. Even as a startup, it's not about size. It's not even doing it at scale or not. It's even just having a tool that trains your interviewers that, as we hire engineers every single month at the moment, we need to have a good and fair and reliable way to assess the candidates. That's been really I think one of the trends that I'm super excited about. And having worked in big and small companies, I know there's a lot of way to go in a lot of these areas, and I'm excited to see some of the tech that's coming out at the moment.
I like it. You've touched on a couple of things that we're probably going to talk about. Well, the questions we have at the end, Chris.
Well, yeah, that's what I was being quiet. I was like, okay, we'll get to that in a minute, because we want to know. One of the last two questions that we'd always ask is, what tools are you super impressed with? But we'll get to those at the end.
Okay.
If that's okay.
Yeah.
So as we come to the end of the show, we always ask these two questions. The first one is kind of what's next for StackOne.
Mm-hmm.
I'll do one at a time.
So, well, I don't know if I mentioned it to you guys, but we just raised the seed round. So we raised $3.5 million from episode 1, which just means, we have Playfair on board and Portfolio Ventures, and it's been such an amazing last few weeks and months. So basically, our focus right now is scaling. We've been scaling like crazy and continuing to build up the product. Some of it we've kind of talked a bit about like UI integrations. A huge focus for us actually automating integrations with LLMs. So that's actually like we're hiring people in that space as well, and that's been one of the things that I'm personally most excited about. Is that would be a huge revolution. That's easily $1 billion product that we have the opportunity to even attempt to build here. So I'm very excited about it, and I know the whole team is. So yeah, that's what we're focusing on.
Fascinating. Congratulations. Our final question, which we touched a lot on, but like of the tools that you've seen, and when you've been rummaging around in the back end, middle end, I don't know what part of it would be. Which tools are super impressing you the most?
I think one of the things that I'm really excited about, at least on the I'll pick on the HRIS. We actually use Rippling as an integration HRIS platform.
Cool.
One of the things that they do really well is they've got an ecosystem, right, of integrations that they plug in kind of seamlessly into a lot of the tools out there. I think for us that's been really helpful. On the recruitment side, I'll probably say ScreenLoop has been really, really impressive for us. Just simply because honestly, even before we built StackOne, we didn't have platforms like ScreenLoop, for example, available. So for us, that has a special place in my heart because they were our first customers. So maybe they're the ones that I can pick. But they also have extremely impressive tech that just has been helping us so much to recruit much faster, much better candidates. Same for reference checks as well. So that's been really great. This is not a sponsored advert. Genuinely, it's been genuinely helpful for us.
Great. They're a great tool, right? We've had them on the show.
Oh, great.
Anton was a super fun guy to chat with, and we gave him a bit of a challenge, didn't we, Darren? I really like what they're doing with like becoming a kind of OS for hiring. There's like, rather than, which I guess screws you a little bit, right? But rather than having to integrate lots of tools, they're trying to build a stack by prioritizing their importance in the workflow, which was super impressive.
The joke is on us though, because they need more integrations as an ATS. So there's always more integrations behind the scenes. Don't worry.
You've always got an angle. Look, how can our listeners reach out if they want to chat to you, or if we've got a previous guest who wants to integrate with another tool? How can they reach out to you?
The simplest way, I guess, two easy ways to reach out. One of them is just go to our website, StackOne.com, and there is a button at the top to request a demo or talk to us. That's the best way. You'll get a response within 24 hours, and we can get a meeting in and chat about either your integration needs or if you're a TA lead. We actually do speak to TA leads very, very regularly. So let me know which platforms you're using, and I can approach them and kind of work with them to help them with integrations. The other way is I'm going to be at the HR Tech London event. If you're in London, I don't know when this is airing, but I'm assuming before the 17th of April. So I'll be there as well. Happy to meet in person as well. I'm based in London.
Nice. Well, look, this has been fun.
Yeah, thank you guys.
You're the hero. You're like you say, you're TA Tech Unbox White Knight. You are of course welcome on the show anytime. And if anyone gets lucky enough to get an invite to the tech breakfast as well, that's also been a fun thing. I went to my first one the other day. That was really good fun with you and Michael Baked in Kalpesh, right? Well, look, it's been wonderful. It's been excellent. It's been insightful. Like we said, you're welcome back anytime. But that brings us to the end of the show. And thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you guys for having me. This was cool.
It's been wonderful.
Thanks.
Thanks so much. That's TA Tech Unbox signing off, everybody. Don't forget to subscribe and check out. Will we be getting a demo?
We can send you a
Yes,
demo.
yeah,
Let's have a
that was
demo.
my question.
Check out the demo. It shall be
live.
hosted on the YouTube. Yes, before this show goes out. That's us signing off, guys. Thanks so much for listening. Catch you later. Bye-bye.